Okay, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you. In fact, that's the first words on the recording. Congratulations. Welcome. Welcome to This is LK Launch, and you're at the third day. It's a workshop on integrating curriculum and assessment into the Learning Commons. And we've got a team of teachers at, is it Riverdale? Riverview Central in Port Lambton. This group has got 3 team members. We've got Nicole, who has been at the library and Learning Commons coach at Riverview Central for, well, maybe she's not been doing that for the full 18 years, but she's got 18 years teaching experience. And her big thing, she says, is engagement. That's what she's passionate about. And if you're working in that environment, I'm sure that's a key thing to have, is that drive to make things exciting and interesting for folks. We also have Jen Peterson. She's grade 2-3 teacher. A little bit of camping and relaxing at the water, but she's willing to dive into new technology and a new way of sharing her understanding and learning today. And joining them is Tanya Nienhaus. And as a 1-2, actually, is it a 1-2 teacher? Full day kindergarten. You're full day kindergarten.
Yep. FDK.
But the real excitement is your son Joe starts school this year. Is he going to be going to that school or a different school?
No,
a different school.
Not. He's going to a different school.
Well,
She's made a better choice than I have.
You are going to experience a school from the other side as a parent, which is really a whole different ballgame, as other people can probably attest.
I can only imagine.
We're very happy to have all of you leading us. I will let folks know that we also have Pam on the line. And she may dive in here and there, doing a little bit of workshops earlier this week. But Pam Gallant, if you hear her voice without a screen, she's also someone who's helping out. So I'm going to continue to add the last few people, but I'm going to turn off my microphone and speaker and turn it off to the presenters.
Okay, welcome everybody from your own comfort, where you're choosing to listen in today, whether you're enjoying some coffee or sitting poolside. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking your time to sit in on our session. My name is Nicole Hooper, and as Rod said, I've been teaching for the past, oh, Rod, we have an error to change slides. Okay, as we work out technology here, okay. So my name is Nicole Hooper, and I've been teaching for the past 18 years, as Rod said. And for the past, 8 months of the last school year, I was a Learning Commons coach for our school board. And last year, a Learning Commons teacher half-time for Riverview and half-time for the school board. And then this year, again, I'll be continuing in the role as a Learning Commons coach. And I have always been passionate about student engagement. So I think that if students are engaged, that's the easy thing, and then everything else can fall into place. But it's that key of engaging students that will either work to help students understand at a deeper level, and we need them to be engaged to do that. So I've brought along with me today 2 of my phenomenal colleagues who I couldn't do this without their support. And the key to Learning Commons and making it work is collaboration. So today's goal is for you to see how we can do this together to make it all happen. And so I'll hand it over to Jen, and she can introduce herself.
Jen Peterson. I've been at Riverview for 11 years now, just recently moving into the primary division. This past year with Nicole as our Learning Commons coach has been exciting. We have been able to do a lot of things together, and we hope that we can share some of that with you today so that you can develop relationships and work on a lot of different cool activities in your own Learning Commons.
Okay, and Tanya.
And I'm Tanya Nienhaus here. Sorry about that. I'm Tanya Nienhaus. So I have been teaching FTK here. I'm going into my 2nd year. I've been here for a long time in lots of different capacities, but it's been really fun to see the Learning Commons sort of unfold in terms of getting our youngest learners in here and working alongside Nicole and the rest of the school, and sort of seeing how it's worked, and getting all of our inquiries set out and our provocation set out. It's been really interesting. So I'm really excited to be here today. So thanks, Nicole.
Well, thank you for joining me. And I'm hoping today as well you get perspective from the early years from our FDK. Jen has experience in being junior and intermediate and now primary. So, and I've been more primary in my experience as well. So hopefully you'll be able to get a whole view from all divisions as well. Okay, so just where to next. Our digital conference hashtag for the whole conference this week has been LK Launch 19. And then today we've made a hashtag of LK Moving LLCs Forward. And I often short form Library Learning Commons as LLCs. It's just a little bit easier to refer to. So, and I think we've chosen Moving LLCs Forward because we are all at different phases in this process, and any movement forward is beneficial to our students. So LLCs moving, LK Moving LLCs Forward. Okay, and just to let you know as well, as Rod mentioned, that the session will be recorded and it will be available on the blog. Some of you have already maybe seen some of the sessions already posted on the blog and the dialogue that's happening, and then some of the extra resources that are attached to those sessions as well. So check back on the blog spot after, or on Twitter. Rod often posts them on Twitter too. So, and after as well on Twitter, there will be a couple questions that I'll post, and then if you wanted to engage in after dialogue, that would be great as well. Okay, so I just wanted to preface today in saying that I have had the very fortunate opportunity of, for the past 8 months of the last school year, going around and people graciously inviting me into their space and putting themselves out there to share it with me. And in that experience, we are all at different phases in our transition from a traditional library to a learning commons, and that's okay. It is okay wherever we're at, whether it be we are just setting our learning commons up to provide more of a collaborative, functional space that is that promotes creativity and innovation and learning, or whether it be we are trying to get our schedules in place and decide how are we going to invite people back or into the learning commons and make it usable and make teachers want to come down, or whether it be how am I going to wrap my head around the planning for the learning commons and what's going to happen within it. So we are all at different phases in the learning commons process, and that's okay. And I think I just want kudos to everybody who takes those initiatives to invite people into their classrooms and signing up today, because it shows that you want to make things happen. Regardless of where we're at, it's just about moving forward with where we are at. So today, let's just make things start to happen. I think that as we were meeting and kind of going over through some things, what came up is the key to the learning commons is first and foremost collaboration, because we need to be able to talk and work together in order to bridge some curriculum into the learning commons, and for the teachers to be aware of what's happening when we come in. So if any of you just want to, you can respond by voice, you can respond by typing in, but what is your idea? Like how do you make relationships happen? Because some of us are at very large schools with a great number of teaching partners, and some of us are at smaller schools, maybe a little bit easier to build those relationships. But what are some ways that you have that work for you to really build relationships and work with your colleagues? And if you two as well, if you want to pipe in the, how did you find when we first started getting the learning commons up and going last year? How did you find that our relationship would work? What did we have to do to make that work?
But we definitely had to communicate quite often about where our class, about where maybe we were at with our group of students, so that we could bring that into the learning commons, so that we could carry on certain lessons that we were working on, so it didn't seem disjointed. So if we were working on, say in our FDK class, if one of the focuses that we had was on birds' nests, I would more often than not, or our ECE partner would more often than not talk to Nicole about what we were doing in sort of hope that we could maybe bring that into the learning commons as well. So just communicating with one another and sort of keeping, obviously, of course, keeping the kids the focus, right? And making sure that it's engaging with the kids and that the kids are really enjoying what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. I like how Rod just said about taking lunch breaks in the staff room is a great way. A lot of our Communication happened very informally, passing in the hallway. What were your thoughts for Learning Commons this week? We've been doing this. Could we incorporate something like that? Or sharing as a conversation during lunchtime. So it can be very informal. It's not a half an hour or a prep time given up to have those conversations. It can be informal and convenient to get those things started.
And I find too, in part on your parts, what you would come to me, Jen had an idea for a STEM activity that we could bring to the Learning Commons. So she brought it to me and said, look, I think this would be a really good opportunity. If you need anything for it, let me know, I'll help you out. So that we're both on all of our parts, we're working together and bringing ideas to each other and saying, what do you think about this? How do you think this will work? And my comfort zone was not FTK. I had never taught FTK at all. So I would often go to Tanya and say, okay, what do you think about this? Yeah. Do you think it'd be too much for your learners? So I'd often bounce ideas off of her as well, because as my role as a Learning Commons teacher, I have FTK to 8. So
we also just to sort of piggyback off what you're saying, we also made sure that we shared materials a lot too. Like I like that we were able to bring certain things down to Learning Commons, and then you would bring things to our classroom, and you would always start like Nicole, you could start the lesson in the classroom with the kids and then bring them down. So it was just a seamless transition for them too. They didn't have that. They were able to just realize that what we were doing in the classroom, we were also going to be doing in the Learning Commons. Bigger space, just still focused on what we're, on what your lesson was.
Yeah, that's right. Did anyone?
Shantima noted that it's important to know your staff and their interests, and incorporate that, as well as spending time getting to know what they're working on. Something we talked about while we were brainstorming for the session was the idea of using technology to communicate. So maybe a Google form or surveys to see what classrooms are working on, so that you could gear your activities to what is happening in the classroom, as well as maybe, if teachers are comfortable, even sharing your long-range plans with your Learning Commons teacher so they know the direction that you're headed in.
Yep, and thanks Shantima as well, because it is those little things. You need to have a personal relationship and bringing in those interests of those teachers, because there may be something that your teacher really likes sewing, or your teacher, there's some sort of interest that your colleagues can bring as well into Learning Commons and share their passion for their students as well. So definitely just those small ideas of getting to know your staff members and on that level is very important. So we talked about if it is possible to plan a time to meet, to collaborate and plan some things together. We know that's not always the reality, especially if you have a large group of colleagues that you're working with, but it is an option. And then we know to have open communication. And Jen and I were talking the other day about having open communication, and about if you're offering something up, or if you have some ideas, just to have a follow through, right? So keeping that communication open. And establishing trust. Trust underpins everything. And I think that a way that we can build that trust is we have to prove what we're doing. And sometimes people are a little bit reluctant to, and I've heard just being around different Learning Commons, that maybe they don't necessarily want to go down to the Learning Commons because they think that it's just fluff, or they think it's a waste of time, or they're not getting curriculum covered. But you have to prove as a Learning Commons teacher that what they're doing is valuable, it's intentional, and it's all to benefit the students and help them learn at a deeper level as well. So I think that takes some groundwork on your part too, to prove and establish that trust.
And I think also encouraging classroom teachers to be open and receptive to the possibilities that exist in the Learning Commons, because it can be so valuable. And as we walk through the presentation today and chat, I think everyone will realize what an opportunity this is to make use of for both the Learning Commons teacher as well as the classroom teacher.
Was there anyone else there? Okay. Okay, so what is a library Learning Commons? We're backing up for some people to just maybe multiple entry points in you signing up for the session today. Some of you may be interested in just like surface level what it is, not really sure of what it is and what it can encompass. So we're kind of backing up a little bit. So what is a library learning commons? And just from our Ontario School Library Association, a quote is, a learning commons provides boundless opportunity for growth. It's based on a cross-curricular perspective, and it recognizes literacy, numeracy, knowledge, thinking, communication, and applications as foundations for the learning, for how to learn. A learning commons becomes the physical and virtual catalyst where inquiry, imagination, discovery, and creativity come alive and become central to growth, and that growth being personal growth, academic growth, social, and cultural growth. And I just wanted you to see, we're bringing you this today from our perspective, and everything we're sharing with you today is how we're making our learning commons work. This model may not be for everybody, and some of the things that you'll see today may not be things that you would be interested in doing in your learning commons, and that's okay. Everybody has their own strengths, and everybody has their own things to bring and empower our students. So what you're seeing today is just how we are making this work. And if you can gather some ideas for this, that's great. If you think it would work for you, or if you have any ideas to share with us as well, we are stronger in the collective, and our ideas can be very powerful if everybody contributes their ideas as well. So our learning commons model, some things that are consistent is that we always have a maker space. We always have a tinker space. We always have some sort of technology embedded within it. We have our physical and digital collection available to the students. We have STEAM challenges, and then outside of that, if that's grouped in, we have cultural growth that will come into it through the year. We partner between some classes. We access community support and bring community members into the school. And then we also bring the learning commons outdoors. It doesn't just have to stay confined to the walls of the school. We bring our learning outdoors, and then sometimes we go outside, collect things, and bring that learning indoors to dive into it a little bit deeper. Okay, so preparing our students for the 21st century, they'll need opportunities to develop competencies. So these competencies, the ministry has actually developed a 21st century competencies guide. And these are to allow our students to learn new ways to learn, that they will be prepared, because we don't know what all careers exist in the future. So we know that research has been done if they can develop some of these competencies to adapt to the world when they go out and are involved in their careers, that if they have some of these competencies, so critical thinking and problem solving, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, self-directed learning, such as learning to learn, to be self-aware, to collaborate, to communicate, and then to be global citizens as well. So any of the activities that we're trying to bring to the Learning Commons are incorporating these competencies as well. And it's very well known to the students as well. They're usually posted on our idea board up front. And we'll often talk about, okay, what is it? What are you learning today? What skills are you learning today? What competencies are you learning today? Do you think you'll be using critical thinking today? Do you think you'll be problem solving once they know what they're doing? Do you think they'll have to collaborate? So at this point, since we started that, kids are now being able to voice and pick out which competencies they are going to be working on. So they're a little bit more self-aware of those as well. So how might we integrate curriculum into the Learning Commons? So I'll give you a little bit of what is a makerspace. The space in our, I'm just gonna, how do I change where those pictures are? For that.
So are the pictures on your slide deck?
Yep.
So if they are animated into your, are they animated on this slide that they'll appear as you sort of hit a space bar or an arrow toggle?
It's okay, if the pictures were up across the top.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to the right.
Okay, so just so folks know, if they see a panel that's open that they want to relocate, like the video panel, you can drag that and move it to a different part of the screen, or you can minimize it. There are little controls if you hover on it that you'll see. The same goes for the chat window if you've got that open and you want to move it aside so that you can see it on the slide. Everyone has that independent control, but that's a good reminder for everyone. Thanks, Nicole.
Okay, good. All right, so the makerspace is a space in our Learning Commons that it's intentionally planned, and it is designed to provide hands-on creativity. And the goal for our makerspace is to have an end product, but not an end product that we say to the students, this is what you have to have at the end of it. The students come up with their own end product. So they're using their own creativity to decide what that will look like. As part of the makerspace, we have a bunch of clear containers that house all of our supplies, and the supplies have been donated, and they've kind of been sorted in terms of paper products, wood products, beads, or pom-poms. So we have a central location that all of these products and supplies that we use are located. And we have a space over here that students can go to grab any of the supplies as well, crayons, markers, rulers. So it's just having a space to contain those items. We have a creation station. We have Lego, and sometimes these involve challenges, Lego challenges, or it may be, okay, theme the Lego wall to make it look like a flower garden. And we usually have different activities that surround that. And pipe in any time here too as well. We will often put out loose parts or things that some of the students can work with to use their own creativity. Okay, and here again, this is all surrounding makerspace, the idea of a makerspace. We had frogs in an aquarium in the Learning Commons, so we had some pictures and fact cards about frogs, and students would use their creativity, their arts, and they would use plasticine and make some pictures. We brought snow in from outside, learned how to color snow and what we could do with that, how to make it darker or lighter, or if it worked painting. As part of our makerspace, we often have loose parts, and I don't know if you want to speak to having some loose parts for our younger learners as well.
Yeah, in our classroom, we try to incorporate as many loose parts rather than, pre-purchased toys like Fisher-Price toys. We like to bring in various items like buttons and pom-poms, popsicle sticks, anything that the kids can use to create with freely. So like Nicole was saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a definite end result or an end item that they have to create. It's something that they can use those parts freely to create what they want. And that sort of, it sort of translates into Learning Commons as well. So what we do in our kindergarten classroom, Nicole sets up certain activities that sort of follow that same plan with the loose parts. And it's the same idea there. Like you see them out in their trays, and you might give them a little template to start with, maybe a book or something that might sort of give them a little hook, and then they can go off and they can create using those loose parts. So it's getting them to create rather than and have purpose in what they're building, rather than just playing with a toy that they may have at home or that they've played with for years and years and years. So it's getting them to see materials in a different way. Rather, a button doesn't necessarily have to be a button. A button can be a little controller. They can use a pipe cleaner to wrap clay around and build a bird or an animal or something like that. So it just gives them that a little bit more freedom to create.
And how might you, so as a Learning Commons teacher, you can set the stage for the classroom teachers. The Learning Commons teachers is not necessarily responsible for that assessment piece in terms of marking it and reporting or on a report card, but a Learning Commons teacher can set the stage for that classroom teacher and have that opportunity available for them if they wanted to engage in assessment into the Learning Commons. So in bringing a class down and they're like having some loose parts out, how might you gather some assessment from some of those activities?
I like how when I come to the Learning Commons, someone else is the lead teacher. So it gives me the freedom and the space to really have conversations with the kids, to observe and make anecdotal notes and really delve into some of those things that I maybe don't always have the time to make note of, and really have a good conversation with different groups of kids. It really lends itself to learning skills. I get a lot of information about my learning skills comments from our time in the Learning Commons.
And I'll just say too, with the kindergarten program being so different, we reuse our 4 frames of learning. So that gives, when we spend time in the Learning Commons, it gives us time to really get in there with the kids too, rather than watching them. Sometimes in the classroom, you can observe them, but you're not really getting into their play with them. But in the Learning Commons, it gives you that opportunity because you've got the other adult in there. It gives you the opportunity to get on the floor with the kids and really ask them those open-ended questions, ask them what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing. And it gives you that opportunity to, just make your tick boxes on your checklist and sort of like what Jen was saying, just write your anecdotal notes. And it's authentic. So it doesn't have to be something that, you're not necessarily looking for something, but to fit it into those 4 frames, it's just good to have those notes. So even if you think, oh, this is going to fit really well into our our problem solving and innovating, that's fantastic, but it might go off in a different direction, and that's okay too, because you're still getting that authentic real learning.
And
Good
some of the
morning,
activities.
girls.
Good morning.
Hi, I just wonder if I could pipe in for a moment. It's Pam.
Absolutely.
So excited to hear the word observe, for teachers to pull back and observe the learning that's going on. And if we think of it from that assessment lens, we're really good at looking at the evaluation of products. And I imagine in the Learning Commons, there's lots of things being produced often, but really we learn most about the student when we sit back and observe them in that process, or ask them questions and take the focus off the end product, because really the student may be able to tell you more about their trial and error throughout the process, and we can gather more about, do they understand how pulleys are working, or if they know why their plant died, because we have that conversation with them. So really valuing what we see kids do, value what we hear them say in conversation with us and with others, and then use that product piece of it as like the tool to help you stimulate the conversation and ask questions about it.
Yeah. And I find so much of what I see in the Learning Commons and what I do, the Learning Commons is not a time, and I don't know, you can pipe in as well, but we don't sit down, and Jen or Tanya do not just go for a break and I take charge of the Learning Commons. It is a very collaborative effort. So we're always going around to the students and talking, or we're also engaged in doing it with them too, and seeing them, like we learn alongside them, and having that assessment as they're learning, so that you're going around asking them questions. And like one of these activities here where they had to follow some directions, a procedure to actually make the procedure, to make the slime or to make the little moving man, they're problem solving as they're going. And I put a little distractor in when they were making slime and put some water. And some of the groups just used the water, but weren't really reading through the instructions. So you're asking them questions throughout, like, well, why is it too liquidy? What do you have to do now because your slime is too liquidy? What one of these materials are you going to use to solve that problem? So really getting them in the moment to think about what they're doing is very important. Okay, and students just using their own creativity here, making robotic arms in their own way, making at different grade levels. So you can have activities in the maker space and you set the stage, but they can accommodate all different grade levels as well. Okay, we also have a tinker space that is part of a regular area in our Learning Commons. The tinker space is, we have safety goggles set up, we have tools set up, and we take donated electronics and appliances, and our students take these apart to look at how they're made, and they repurpose those parts to make new things as well. And I've just been blown away by some of the things that they've made over the year. Actually in the last bit of the year, as they're finally getting into not just taking things apart, but actually repurposing them and seeing what they're doing with them, has been a huge learning curve for me, because I didn't even know myself how to make some of those things. So we have to also keep in mind that creativity is a collaborative endeavor, and they're working together. And some of the students who have some of these skills share them with the others that they never knew how to do. And they help empower each other, and they have that autonomy over their learning, because they are helping, they're leading the learning. They're leading the learning for their peers, and they're stepping up and they're teaching them. And so they get that sense of empowerment. So here's our tinker space and how they're taking things apart. This group here to the right has actually repurposed some of their parts so to make a windmill, a functioning windmill, which their blade was cardboard, and they used a little motor that we had. These wires are taken from some of our electronics that they had taken apart, and they later realized that they could take a switch from one of the electronics that they took apart, so then they then powered their windmill with a switch, which is pretty incredible to see. Something that kids are very engaged in, very excited about, and they constantly ask if they can go to the Tinker Station. We've had to problem solve with that station along the way too, because we've had, I think along the way, you're always setting the stage because you don't know what to expect. You haven't done it before. So when we see some kids over there trying to hammer away at a piece of electronics, there's always still that overseeing that has to go to help model along. Okay, technology, there's always a piece of technology incorporated somewhere into it, whether they are working with some coding apps on the iPads, or whether they are, whether it's integrating language, media literacy, music, there's always some sort of technology incorporated into the Learning Commons. So here was just an activity that was the grade 1-2s were partaking in. And this was set up as a flower garden for Dash, and they had to make Dash move along the flower garden. But in the meantime, they had to use their prior knowledge of coding and their prior knowledge of measuring in centimeters in order to figure out and problem solve how far to move him along before he has to pick up a flower or turn a corner to return the flowers into a vase by the end of it. So incorporating that curriculum into the technology piece as well. And I just wanted to show you this slide as well, because it just shows that in the moment, Jen is there with the kids. And I don't know if you wanted to speak to that as well and what was happening there.
It gives a lot of opportunity to work in the moment with skills. As you can see, I'm on the left there sitting with some kids working with some math and literacy skills on the Osmos. So it gives the opportunity to really differentiate their learning, because you're looking at problems that they're coming across and dialogue and how you can move them forward to solve the little puzzle that's on the screen, and really getting to understand where they're at, so you know how to move them forward to the next point or to the next skill level. So there's so many opportunities where you can just sit and dialogue and have those conversations to help them be a better learner.
I think that the Learning Commons, in the way that it's set up and the activities that are set up for the students, they just naturally promote that differentiated learning. And there's multiple entry points for students, for our gifted learners, when they're in the makerspace and using their creativity and using multiple minds to pull things in together. It naturally does that, differentiate learning for students. So incorporating technology into, maybe they're using some loose parts and we have an app that they're going to integrate and use alongside the loose parts, or where we might have grade 8 students who are actually making music with plants and hooking them up to music with the Makey Makey. And actually, after these students were asked to work with some of the younger grades with the plants and the Makey Makeys, lending what they had learned and teaching some of the younger students too. So taking advantage of some of those opportunities when they happen, just incorporating the green screen and the Ozobots. Okay, and we will also have some students who are interested in sharing some of their items, maybe even from home. And here is an opportunity on the left-hand side. We have a student who brought some technology from home and wanted to share with the kids how they can code that robot in order to make it work, and then allowing those students then to try it out as well. And on the right, using Dash to actually make a square, make some shapes, and coding him to learn about angles and distance.
I And can I just say something quickly
Sure.
too? I was a little bit surprised as my first year teaching kindergarten. I was really surprised last year how quickly, our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds caught on to coding, using Botley and using Dash and Dot, and it inspired our class. Really, I will say we ended up getting getting a Botley for our class, and we had access to a Dash and Dot. And, we incorporated even in our class because of their experience in the Learning Commons and how invested they were in the technology. It actually gave us a whole sessions throughout the week where we would set up our own challenges. And that was something that Nicole and I talked about, setting up our, just keeping the momentum going with our youngest learners. So we would set them, we'd set them up in their own groups, and they would have their own challenges where, they would have the robots go and do a challenge. And I think that they're, excited to possibly be able to go back and talk to Nicole about like what they did, or talk to us, or talk to the class. So the collaboration can actually transfer back to your classroom as well, which was really incredible for such young students, I thought.
And being able to set that stage and set it up for the classroom teacher so that then they can bring that learning back to the classroom is something very valuable that you can do, as well as the Learning Commons teacher. And if you're collaborating and working together on that. And here it may just seem like, okay, the kids are just experimenting and playing with a marble run, but the learning in that was being able to see if they could make a marble drop from the top to the bottom within 10 seconds, I think that was. I think originally we set at 20 seconds, thought, okay, that's a little unmanageable for them, and set it at 10 seconds. And they had to problem solve on how they could change that marble run in order to, and which pieces they would change in order to make that actually drop to the bottom in 10 seconds. Okay, and then we have some circuits, and again, we show in the moment, helping students figure out how to create a circuit, working with positive, negative, with the batteries, the cell batteries. And then you see a lot of happy faces, not just because they're smiling, but it's pride because of what they've accomplished and what they now know that they can do, and how copper tape can be a conductor, and learn about different kinds of conductors. Okay, so STEM challenge is also a part of what we can do, and I find that STEM challenges, aside from other things in Learning Commons as well, but are very empowering for establishing a growth mindset, and that can radiate to the classroom, because STEM challenges really, for the students, they have to be able to persevere at a task, and it's like failing forward, right? They're going to try some things, and some things are not going to work. But because they have failed at some sort of part in their learning, they learn from that, and then they keep going forward with their learning because they've learned about something that didn't work. So really creating that growth mindset, and us modeling that you need to keep trying, and us modeling a growth mindset for them will help them move their thinking along as well in these challenges, and helping them to sustain that.
Yeah, and also using like positive language with them too, in trying to support that growth mindset. So, keep trying, try something different. Why didn't it work? Like using the right language to keep them persevering and try to keep them engaged in it too, I think is important.
Questioning is so important. Using those effective questions, right?
Yeah.
That's really going to help them learn at a deeper level.
Yeah.
And then whenever we do any of the STEM challenges, we go through an engineering design process where they actually have to understand the problem, and then it's a collaborative process. So they are involved in the inquiry, but what they're doing is they love to sketch out their ideas and plan together. And we have whiteboards, we have vertical learning surfaces, we have whiteboard tables, and they're always sketching out their ideas and talking to their peers in terms of what their plan is, and then they're each adding their own ideas. And sometimes it doesn't always go great with the group working together, that we'll have to go over, and we will have to talk about those competencies like collaboration, and say, okay, how can we make this work? You're a team. How can you make your ideas work together? It's not always sunshines and rainbows when these things are happening in here, but that's our role, is to go around and help them learn how to do these things, because they have to be able to work with people. So after their planning stage, they get to the trying it out by testing out and designing building their design and testing it out to see if it works. Okay, and we had a day where some of these STEM challenges can accommodate multiple grade levels, and some of your STEM challenges you may choose to only do with specific grade levels. So we had a water challenge, water tower design challenge that we found fit multiple grade levels, just to give you an example. And then what we did was we kind of mapped it out for you to see what it looks like if you're just focusing on one grade, which was their engineers. They were given a challenge of developing their own water tower that could deliver water to a paper cup that was about 90 centimeters away in a controlled manner. So they had to stop and start the flow of water to fill a cup. So it had some controls there that they had to work with. And we showed you how that there's these overall expectations you're starting with. You develop some learning goals and some success criteria. And then they can look back, and as you're going around talking to them as they're engaged in the water tower challenge, you're asking those effective questions, and it's in the moment feedback that you're giving them. And that assessment piece of, okay, well, what do you need? Which force do you need to act on in order for that water to flow down? Like, where should you position your basin that's going to be holding the water? We have challenges in here for part of our STEM challenges. They get to test out and try, and it's exciting because it's the build-up. But it's the learning along the way that matters. And how are you going to get that balloon to stick in to your Lego vehicle when you can't use tape, when you can't, so you have to problem solve and make these things work along the process. We have STEM challenges for our FTKs. I know at first I thought, kind of not knowing the FTK, and okay, Tanya, what do you think? Do you think this will work with the FTKs? And FTKs love little STEM challenges, and you see their strengths coming out there.
Hi, Nicole.
Yes.
I was just seeing, like, your STEM challenges have that direct link to the curriculum. As a grade 6 teacher, I probably see lots of connections to, say, like the electricity unit, and grade 5, the pulley and gear pieces. So I can see that kind of side of things. But I was just flipping through the science curriculum, and in the front matter of the science curriculum, it has information on, like, the inquiry and research skills continuum and the problem solving continuum. And it breaks it down into things like problem solving and planning. And it's like a rubric, so it's some really great language in there to visit, to think about when you're writing your learning goal, just to be focusing on those problem solving skills or test and retest skills. Like sometimes I need help with how to write my learning goal so my students are connected to it. So just wanted to bring that to the table to say, like, you've got your curriculum expectation piece, but there's also that problem solving side of things that you look in the front matter of the science curriculum. It might be a good resource for you.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, and then bringing the learning outdoors, or bringing the outdoors into the learning commons as well. That we did a whole school tapping trees, and each kind of division had their own idea of what we did. Do you want to speak to that, Jen? Or?
I think this is a really exciting process that we did in the Learning Commons, because it was a whole school incorporated activity, which is nice for us because we do have a small school, so we can get everyone involved. And we had different age levels doing different things. So we had our youngest learners go out and tap trees and learn about where we put the tap, why do we put it there, and learning about all of those important things that happen there. And then we had our junior learners researching facts and information, and we put together a video about making maple syrup. And then our older learners, our intermediate learners, were measuring and looking at the weather and comparing the weather and the amount of sap that was collected. So it was an all-encompassing activity where different grade levels could approach it from different learning experiences. And I think we're looking forward to maybe trying some more of those activities where we can all participate in the same type of learning.
Okay, and bridging our relationship with our Indigenous support, Gretchen. And she came in and actually taught our students about the history of the First Nation history of maple syrup. So bridging that relationship and bringing in that piece and helping our students grow culturally as well. We have school gardens, and there's math incorporated as they're measuring the distance of their seeds, maybe making some birdhouses or harvesting our garden, having our FTKs go out into the schoolyard and find some materials that they can find that match some of the shapes outside, and just bringing that learning in. And partnering with classes, it's very heartwarming to see some of the older kids and working with the younger students and how that relationship can grow, and how the younger students really look forward and look up to those older kids to help them along, but meanwhile meeting some of the expectations like making musical instruments for the older kids. And bringing in that cultural growth and having your students be able to see themselves into the Learning Commons is important. So being able to having resources for them that they can see themselves in and that they can have easy access to, and bringing in some of our elders to come, some of our dance troupes to come and help with that cultural growth. Inviting community members into the Learning Commons as well that can share their passions and ignite that passion for some of our students who might not otherwise know those careers or those things exist.
Shantima just added a great idea, the idea that Learning Commons time can be great as learning buddies instead of our traditional reading buddies. So what a great idea to incorporate that.
We actually did that. Our class did that with the other grade, well, the one grade 4-5 class. And some of the things that we came up with were actually a lot different. Than we expected, but we actually considered it to be learning buddies, and we came down here quite often. Anytime that we had the opportunity to come down to Learning Commons, we usually did our activities in here. And
that was outside of my time with you, but that's how you use the Learning Commons when it was available. And that's a great idea in terms of other Learning Commons teachers, their teachers seeing how that time can be used as well. So we wanted just to give you a little bit of a glimpse on, and not to show that what we are doing is the be all and end all of the Learning Commons and that your Learning Commons has to look like this, but just to give you some ideas in terms of what it can look like, and that the Learning Commons can be a very powerful space in terms of fostering that creativity, leading to innovation and learning, building those competencies for our students. And at the time, it's very valuable, and the kids look forward to it. They're always asking weekly, what are we going to do in the Learning Commons? Because it's always so new. And what we try to do in here is to make what they're learning in the classroom come alive into the Learning Commons, so they can actually see what they're learning and see it come to life in here. So that's the basis of what we're doing in the Learning Commons, and a little glimpse kind of conversationally on how you can incorporate curriculum and assessment into the Learning Commons. So thank you for joining us today. If anyone has any questions, you can pop it up on our screen. I think we have a couple minutes left there.
It's very clear that at Riverdale, you've got a community of people that have made something really by putting a variety of pieces together. You've got your own little maker project that you've designed something and made it and brought it to life. I'm so pleased that you were able to present today in the Learning Commons. I will let you know and let people that are in the session know that resources related to this session, I'm going to try and get the slides from you in a little bit, but they're also available on the Showcase website. I put a link in the chat. So if people want to follow up and revisit the slides or see resources related to this topic, they can visit there. And I'm going to paste a very special invitation later today at 4:30 this afternoon. We're hosting another Zoom meeting, a meeting in Zoom, but it's a meeting to look at how this model for professional development might be used in the future, and how it works well and what limitations might be around it. So if you're at all interested and free at 4:30, I invite you, whether you're a participant or a presenter, to join us at the meeting room in that link that I pasted there. You can copy it. We'll maybe share it out on Twitter later this afternoon. But thanks to the group. Wonderful job. I hate that I have to run because it was such a rich conversation that I know could go on much farther. But I'm going to have to close this meeting with a big thank you to everyone, the presenters in particular, the folks at Riverdale, and the folks that took the time to come. I'm off to get another meeting going. But thanks a lot, ladies.
Okay, thank you, Rod, for everything. And thank you for Tanya and Jen for joining me today, and for all of you for taking your time this morning to sit in on our session.